Welcome back, everyone, to the Deep Dive.
Yeah.
Today we're doing something a little bit different. We're going to be diving into just like single days news.
Oh, wow.
And all of the kind of philosophical and political stuff that is going on.
Fascinating.
Yeah, and you guys sent in a ton of really interesting articles that kind of span the spectrum.
I was really struck by just how much there was to talk about today.
I know. It's like every day it's something.
Yeah, exactly.
So one of the articles that really kind of stood out to me was about the University of Puerto Rico closing like 64 majors.
Oh, wow.
And one of them is philosophy.
Really?
And they're saying it's budget cuts and low enrollment.
Right.
But it just seems like there's something kind of bigger at play here.
Well, it is interesting to think about like what that says about the value that we place on different fields.
Exactly.
And of course, the faculty are saying this is going to hurt Puerto Rico as a whole.
Right.
And I think there is an argument to be made there,
Yeah.
What are we saying when we cut philosophy? Are we saying,
Like critical thinking?
Yeah, critical thinking and, grappling with the big questions. Those things aren't important anymore.
Right. And that actually leads perfectly into our next article.
Okay.
Which is from the Chronicle of Higher Education.
Yeah, okay.
And they're basically arguing that academics need to do a better job at explaining the liberal arts.
Oh, interesting.
Like proving their worth in the job market.
Oh, okay.
They were giving this example of like a French department could partner with like state economic development initiatives.
Oh, wow.
To, show how it has practical value.
Right.
What do you think about that?
I don't know. I'm a little torn. On one hand, like, I get it. We need to show students that you can get a job with a philosophy degree. But on the other hand, like reducing everything to its job potential feels like we're missing the point. Like the value is in developing critical thinking skills and communication skills and, a broader understanding of the human experience.
Right.
All of those things are valuable no matter what you end up doing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know. I think it's tough.
So is this a sign that like the liberal arts model is like broken? Or are we just like going through a period of readjustment?
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to say for sure.
Yeah.
I think it's clear that, we need to have this conversation about what is the purpose of higher education in the 21st century.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's move on to something that's been kind of dominating the headlines lately.
Okay.
Artificial intelligence.
Of course. Yeah.
So there's this article you sent that I thought was really interesting. It was talking about how AI could change education.
Right.
Like fundamentally, from how we teach and learn to like even the nature of knowledge itself. It's
a fascinating thought and honestly a little unsettling. Right.
Totally, yeah.
And it's funny, the article even compares AI anxiety today to Socrates' fear of writing.
Oh, wow.
Because, he was worried that relying on written texts would weaken our memories and make us, less able to think critically.
Right.
And, are we seeing that same pattern playing out with AI?
That's a really interesting connection.
Yeah.
Speaking of AI, the Vatican just released this document about the ethics of using it.
Oh, wow.
And they're covering everything like warfare, data privacy,
environmental impact.
Yeah, all of it.
Interesting.
And they're even warning against like anthropomorphizing AI.
What do you mean by that?
Like treating it as if it has like human emotions and motivations.
Oh, I see.
It's like they're saying, hey, hold on a sec, let's not get ahead of ourselves.
Right.
Which is interesting considering that, there was this other news story recently about AI potentially crossing a red line by self-replicating without human instruction.
Oh, really?
So it makes you wonder, have we reached the point where we need like a global ethical framework for AI development?
It seems like it.
It's like we're living in a science fiction novel.
It really does.
But let's take a break from the existential for a second.
Okay.
And talk about something a little bit lighter.
Okay.
Flowers.
Flowers.
So the U.S. narrowly avoided a trade war with Colombia.
Oh, good.
Which is good news for Valentine's Day.
Right.
But there's this one article that suggests that, even this close call might still impact prices.
For those bouquets?
Yeah.
How so?
Well, it's interesting because this blogger is arguing that even just the threat of a trade war can affect market perceptions.
I see.
And he was bringing up William James.
Okay.
And saying that this whole, tension between the U.S. and Colombia has probably made retailers more risk averse. which could lead to higher prices.
Even if the actual supply of flowers hasn't changed, so
Yeah.
just the perception of scarcity
Exactly.
can drive up prices.
Yeah, so even a temporary kind of disruption
Yeah.
can have these like lasting effects. So speaking of like global affairs,
Yeah.
there's another article that summarizes this new book called Regions and Powers,
Okay.
and it's about the changing geopolitical landscape of Africa.
Interesting.
And the main argument is that sub-Saharan Africa is moving away from that traditional like Westphalian model of nation states.
Right, so like a world that's neatly divided into these independent countries.
Exactly. And instead they're seeing the rise of like non-state actors
Yeah.
and more kind of fluid power dynamics.
So like less about borders and more about these complex relationships.
Exactly. And it's really interesting because they identify only one true security complex.
Like in the whole continent.
Yeah, dominated by South Africa.
Uh,
So the question is, will this move towards like a more complex system
right.
lead to greater stability or more conflict?
Yeah. Is this a good thing or a bad thing?
Yeah. And it makes you wonder if our old ways of like understanding international relations are even relevant anymore.
Totally. The world is getting so interconnected and
Yeah.
complex. And it feels like we need new ways of thinking about it.
Absolutely. Okay. So we've talked about education, AI, international relations.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about something a little closer to home.
Okay.
Human nature.
Right.
So one of the articles is asking if human nature is actually changing.
Like evolving.
Yeah. And it brings up John Dewey's ideas about evolution and the malleability of our species.
I mean, it's a question that's been debated for centuries, right?
Right.
Are we inherently good or bad? Are we blank slates?
Yeah, and it's even more interesting because there's this other article that's arguing that most workplace dress codes are immoral.
Oh, interesting.
Exactly.
I see where you're going with this. So
Right.
that article is suggesting that we're becoming more individualistic
Yes.
and expressive, challenging traditional norms.
Exactly.
So is that a sign of like a deeper shift in human nature?
Yeah.
Like Dewey might have argued?
Right.
Or is it just a passing cultural trend? This is where things get really interesting. To really understand this, maybe we can look to philosophy for some answers.
Good.
There's this blog that has a bunch of quotes
Right.
from different thinkers like George Eliot and Simone de Beauvoir.
Right.
And one that really stood out to me
Yeah.
was from Frederick Douglass.
Okay.
He said,
Yeah.
we can criticize the characters and actions of men about us because we can see them outside of ourselves. But self-criticism arises out of the power we possess of making ourselves objective to ourselves.
Wow, that's powerful.
Right.
It really makes you think about self-awareness,
Yeah.
especially like in a world where, technology is like constantly changing and challenging our norms.
Absolutely.
Do we need to become more introspective
I think so.
to navigate all of these like ethical dilemmas?
Yeah, and maybe that's where the value of the liberal arts comes in.
Right.
Maybe they're even more crucial now. In this world that's becoming increasingly complex and driven by technology.
So even amidst all this talk of AI and trade wars and, these geopolitical shifts,
Right.
we still need to remember to like,
To look inward.
yeah.
To reflect.
Speaking of looking at things from a different perspective,
Okay.
there's this really thought-provoking post from the Marginalian that invites us to see the world through the eyes of an astronaut.
Oh, wow.
Like imagine seeing the Earth from space.
Yeah.
This fragile blue marble just suspended in the vastness of the cosmos.
It really puts things in perspective, doesn't it?
Totally. Like it makes you rethink what it even means to be human.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, we've talked about the potential downsides of AI.
Right.
But what about the potential benefits?
Okay.
So there's this article that compares two AI chatbots, ChatGPT and DeepSeek,
Oh, yeah.
and it's clear that the technology is advancing at an incredible pace.
It's mind-blowing.
Does this mean that we're on the cusp of some new era of human progress?
Well, it's possible. But of course, with these advancements come new ethical considerations.
Right.
For example, another article you sent dives into the morality of using AI to like reanimate celebrities.
Oh, wow.
Like digitally resurrect them.
Like a Black Mirror episode.
Right. And it raises all these questions about ownership and individual rights.
Even after death.
Exactly. Like if we recreate someone's likeness using AI, is it really them or just a sophisticated simulation?
It's like that ship of Theseus paradox.
Yeah, if you replace every part of something, is it still the same thing?
Right. These are questions philosophers have been grappling with for centuries.
Exactly.
And now they're taking on this whole new urgency
Yeah.
in the age of AI.
Yeah.
Speaking of age-old philosophical questions,
Okay.
one blogger is exploring the problem of evil,
Ah, good.
specifically like a revival of the logical argument from evil.
Which basically argues that the existence of evil is incompatible with a benevolent and all-powerful God.
Right, like how can both exist?
Exactly.
And this blogger is examining a contemporary philosopher's attempt to revive this argument. So even in our technologically advanced world,
Yeah.
we're still grappling with these fundamental questions about the nature of existence and the meaning of life.
It seems we can't escape them.
It just seems like every single day there's like new AI news.
It's relentless, isn't it?
It is. It really is. And it's both exciting and a little bit daunting.
For sure.
We even have this article, that's comparing these two AI chatbots, ChatGPT and DeepSeek.
Right.
And it's just like the pace of development is incredible.
It's amazing how quickly things are changing.
It really is.
Yeah.
It really is. It just makes you wonder, like, what's the world going to look like in 5 or 10 or 20 years?
I know. It's hard to even imagine.
It is.
But I think it's safe to say AI is going to have like a massive impact on pretty much every aspect of our lives.
For sure.
And as we've been talking about, all of that comes with these huge, ethical and philosophical questions that we really need to start thinking about seriously.
We do. Okay, so speaking of ethical considerations, there's this article that explores this concept from Chinese philosophy called Harmonizing with the Tao.
Interesting.
And it kind of presents like a different perspective on ethics.
How so?
Well, it emphasizes like participation in the flourishing of all things, embracing diversity, and even like celebrating death as a natural part of life's cycle.
Wow, that's so different from some of the Western ethical frameworks we've been talking about.
It is, right.
It really highlights the importance of looking at these issues from multiple perspectives. There's no one-size-fits-all answer.
There isn't. And we really need to be open to different ways of thinking and approaching all of these global challenges.
I completely agree. And that kind of brings us back to, the importance of critical thinking and, being willing to question our own assumptions.
Which is really what philosophy is all about.
Exactly.
Yeah. So from the future of higher education to the ethics of AI to shifting global power dynamics to the mysteries of human nature.
It feels like we've covered a lot of ground today.
We have. And it's amazing to think that this is all just from, like a single day's worth of news.
It really shows you the power of taking a deep dive.
It does.
Into these seemingly random events and ideas.
Right.
Because when you start to connect them, you see these larger trends emerge.
Totally. And it makes you think critically about the world around us.
Exactly.
So it's all about, making these connections, asking tough questions, and just like embracing the complexity of it all.
I love that.
And that's what we try to do here on the Deep Dive.
Absolutely.
So we encourage all of you to keep exploring these topics, keep questioning.
Yeah.
And as always, thanks for joining us on this journey.